which is why, from an external point of view, I look at people and culture roles. I won't say HR anymore. I mean, I don't like the term HR. I think HR is very old school, corporate sort of terminology. The people and culture division of a business, that facet is so crucial to everything. It connects everything. Why? Because it's the human side of the business, and everything that impacts the human. So no matter how great the concept is for a tech business, if they don't have the right people in there, they will not go far. All right. If you don't treat those people well, they will not stay with you.
And if it's a people business, I think now it's become more. There's been more and more studies that like employee engagement is so critical to the success of any business, and having a team that want to win as a collective allows you to turbocharge your growth and turbocharge what you want to do 10x.
In today's episode of Steering Success, we talk to Saif Kidwai, a global people and talent specialist. In this episode, we cover how he and his co-founders built arguably one of the best recruitment agencies, Digital Gurus. We discuss his transition into a chief people officer position with one of the fastest growing tech companies in the region. And finally, we will also discuss and touch on his future plans in the talent and people advisory space, which is super exciting. Saif, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
How are you, buddy?
I'm good, thank you very much.
That was a sigh there for a second.
No, really good. Just really glad the summer the hot summer of Dubai is over, and now we're getting to the bit where everything happens, right? I think we have.
This is a busy time, right?
Yeah. All the events are happening. People are out meeting again, so there's that buzz is back. Like
exactly.
I find myself in GIFC and other places, and you can really, really feel like everyone's back.
Yeah, we do love it.
Yeah.
Saif, you've got a very interesting background and sort of career profile, because unlike most of us, including myself, you've had the privilege on sitting on both sides of the fence. You were successful enough to run arguably one of the best digital recruitment agencies in the world. And you've also held a very senior position in a fast-growing tech startup. I want to start with your time with Digital Gurus as a co-founder there in London, and then obviously moving here to the UAE. Can you give us a bit of a rundown on obviously how that came about? Because I've heard some stories, I know some people, and you had a bit of a sort of Steve Jobs sort of moment when you started in backyards or in garages and so forth. So I'd love to hear your sort of journey from there.
Yeah, sure, of course. And again, thanks for having me on. For me, so Digital Gurus was an idea that came about from three guys. We all worked together. We finished university. We're working in the same place. We're very lucky to be working in that tech digital scene at very early stages. I think it was 2006. And I remember like literally my first client was Sega. And it's like you're 21 years old, you're working with Sega, you're recruiting for them and you're placing. Just like, this is cool. Like the nerd in me was very, very happy. And took to it very well. In a relatively short space of time, we were all very successful. If you see sort of 2006, 2007, 2008, that was the peak of the market, right? And we decided, the three of us, to set up a company called Digital Gurus.
Was this before the GFC?
Yeah. So this was in May. Yeah. In September, 3 months later, the financial crisis came. So we literally left at the best possible time, and then the whole market collapsed.
Wow.
I think, however, and as you hear more and more these days, there are some success stories that come out of global recessions. And I think we were one of those. Our timing was, I think, great. We had very low overheads, and we were literally working in a spare room, maybe not much bigger than the studio, three of us in my parents' house. We were beavering away. We were just working away, a little bit oblivious to like global market conditions. And we were very lucky that digital and tech was one of the few sectors that really stayed.
It had a pulse, right?
Yeah, it stood the test of time, and it was one of the few growth markets, right? So coming out of the recession, 2008, 2009, we are able to hitch on that momentum, We were working with some of the biggest advertising agencies in the world, which were residing in London.
Yeah.
We moved into central London, into offices. We got our first couple of staff. I think something that we did, we were completely self-funded. So the three of us just had a bit of savings that we had, and we did that. At that time, it was very rare to raise money or look for investment. I look back now and I think, if only we had that, maybe we could even turbocharge things even more. 2 years passed, 3 years passed. We got from 20 people to 30 to 60. Within 4 years, we were the largest digital recruitment agency in London.
Wow.
We were recruiting across everything: your tech, your creative, your marketing, cybersecurity, big data. And we were winning awards. We won Best Agency of the Year. We won Best Company to Work for. LinkedIn ranked us number 1 in EMEA for companies over 50 people, recruitment companies over 50 people. So it was a very, very successful period. I think what we did very well was we built a brand.
Yeah.
Digital Gurus became a name that everyone in that space got to know. And that was because we gave a lot back to the community as well. We did a lot of events. We met people in person. We invested very heavily on LinkedIn. We were one of the first pioneers there. We went down the social media route very early on and had Twitter followings and LinkedIn groups. And I think that all culminated into building something quite special. We ended up going international. So we got that experience. We opened an office in Dubai. We opened one in Sydney. And we were about to head to the US. And I think this was 2014, 2015. We'd been going for about 6 or 7 years. And a large-scale IT recruitment company called the Rethink Group, they were introduced to us. And we were very clear from early on that we always wanted to build a business to exit.
Yeah.
And we were very laser focused on that. And I think some of the experience, what we learned very early on, there was a couple of real nuggets of knowledge that were given to us, were build a great business that could run without you.
Yeah.
So we had to force ourselves to give up control, pass our clients on to more junior people, and really, even if it went wrong, we had to bite our tongues and just go with it. Another one was focus on the end, have a very clearly defined end result, and build a backwards plan to that milestone, and then do everything you can to stay laser focused on getting to that end goal. I think those 2 things really helped us. And then the third piece, which was around that, I think, was we built what I would call a phenomenal culture internally. Like, recruitment is one of those industries where recruiters come and go. Very, very fickle. They have a couple of bad months. They're looking elsewhere. Yeah. Our average tenure when we were like 5 or 6 years was 3.5 years.
Wow.
Most of our guys were grads who'd come through, and they were senior consultants. And I think when I look back now, the culture comes from the founders.
Yeah.
The mentality, the way you work, that is always founder led. But what happens is when you start to scale too quickly or too fast, it's very easy for companies to lose that. So I think that's what we did very well. Between the partners, we were able to manage different areas of the business, and we were able to really harness and create that culture where people just loved hanging out together. Like, I still see now, I'm connected with most of the old original employees, and like, they're still best friends outside of work.
That's
and
amazing.
I think that's something for me which I really cherish. It's just like, look, we put these random people together, and now they're best friends. Some people have moved abroad together. They're living abroad. Like, that's amazing. And
you even had some marriages in your company, right?
Yeah.
People get married who were employees, who were colleagues.
Yeah, definitely. So it's not something that happened all the time, but yeah, definitely. We had a few. So there was a couple of years when we were like 50, 60 people at our very peak, where I think every single person would have truly loved just coming into work. Yeah. And in an industry which is very cutthroat, which is high pressure, extreme highs and lows, I think we found a way to manage that.
So how do you do that? I mean, let's become or get very specific on this, right? Because culture is spoken about a lot all around the world. It's spoken about a lot on social media platforms like LinkedIn. Okay, people are, they're talking about their culture like, you're joining the family and whatnot. And I've been seen to sort of challenge that sort of statement because I don't agree with it, because I believe families are typically broken.
Yeah.
Right. And why would you want to try and create it like a family model when people normally stay close to families based on their obligations, not by choice, right?
Yeah.
You don't choose parents, you don't choose siblings and so forth, right? So, and families are typically, broken to a certain degree. So how do you go from, a 3-man band, scaling it up to 60 very, very fast in arguably the most competitive, most fickle industry there is, which is recruitment, because people leave and jump ship for the worst reasons possible.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you not only build that culture, and what are those specifics about that culture, but how do you sustain and maintain that culture to get them to actually buy in, to get these results that you've been highlighting?
Yeah. And that's a great question. And to be honest, I don't think there's one clear answer. And it was something that we were never, at the time, we were never conscious that we were doing it, or we never knew we were doing it. Like, it's only when I look back and we self-reflect, we can see what we were doing. And what
do you think that's why it worked more? Because it was natural?
So the culture that we built, I think we actually didn't know we were doing it at the time. It's one of those things that only on self-reflection, and when I look back at what we did we do something special?
Do you think that's why it worked well? Because neither of you were sort of conscious and thinking about what you were trying to achieve? It just happened naturally?
I don't know. I actually think that I would have preferred to know what we were doing.
Okay.
And I think that always helps, right? And I think if you can consciously do the right behaviors, it will only help. And I think we were 3 very young guys, right?
Yeah.
And I think I think the magic of what we did was the fact that we just got it right at that time. If I'm really critical on it, why did we do it right? Like, how did we be able to build that? And then I look back at podcasts that I've listened to, or speaking to other advisors and stuff, and I think
there are other podcasts outside of this one. Really?
Yeah, believe it or not. And I think finding out people's why was crucial to our success, and being genuine with our people to actually find out what makes them tick. I think it's very easy to say that, but we got to a relationship with a lot of our staff where it was almost borderline friends. Like, there was a divide.
That'd be hard though, wouldn't it? To have that sort of almost pushing that sort of line of friendship and leaders in the business. Yeah,
and I think if we're really self-critical, we probably had very clear favoritism sometimes at points.
Yeah.
There were probably team members who were so close that other people might think, oh, they're untouchable, or they can do no wrong and stuff like that. And I think that's where the extra experience would have helped to still create that divide. But I think when you have that, and when you create a community or a team, an environment, a culture like that, the people who believe in it and feed into it, and they can see the success, and they can see that, okay, cool, if I listen to these guys, they're going to make me successful. Or if I do these right behaviors, or if I watch this guy, if I hang out with these people, you're in that group of people who are just doing very well. And we were able to create that. And when I go back to the why, it's just recruitment is, all our guys are very incentive driven. Like, right, there's no...
Well, the good ones are.
Yeah, the good ones, right? And I think that's what we want to always try and find. And it's just like, what makes you tick? And a big part was our interview process and how we met potential recruiters to really try and dig in, because recruiters, again, we're all great salespeople as well, right? We can sell ourselves in the perfect way in interviews. It's just like, what sort of questions can you ask to find out what makes you tick? And a nice little trick we used to do was look into people's like upbringings, family back home. Do you have both parents? Do they both work? Do you have any siblings? Are any successful? Is there anyone that has that little chip on their shoulder, or is there anyone who has had some life experiences or some adversity where we can...
Was the chip a good thing or a bad thing?
A good thing.
Yeah?
Yeah, the chip. You want someone to be able to have some motivation to prove something. They need that. They need that. Get out of bed every day, even if something goes wrong. You know what? I need to do this.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah,
that was what we really like out of every interview. That's what we were really trying to dig into.
Because that's what you are, right? That's what you and your founders are. Like, you guys come from a place where things weren't just given to you on like a silver spoon. Like, you have to graft. You have to earn it. You have to fight for it, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I am the first entrepreneur in my family, I think, someone who's actually gone out and just set up something on their own. And when I used to tell family members, they're like, what is that? What are you doing? Like, what are you doing in that room? Like, sort of thing. It's just, oh no, this is my business. This is what I'm trying to do. And it was very foreign to people. Yeah. Like, I think when you finish university and you're from South Asian sort of descent, in living in UK, like, you're expected to be like a doctor or a lawyer or like, I did
engineer or
I mean, I did a financial economics degree, right?
Did you?
Yeah, I was like, okay, cool, I'll be a banker. Yeah. So for me, there was always something. I don't think I don't know if I really knew, but I just knew that I wanted to do well, and I had a drive to be very good at whatever I did. And I think that was my driver, and I think the other two guys had their own unique thing. And I think as a threesome, I think it worked really well. Yeah. And we complemented each other. I think it's very important. A lot of founders, when they set up businesses, they look for people who are very similar to them. I actually think it's very important to find people who have a different skill set to you, and people who have a different mindset. And if those two can work really well together, it can create something really special.
What did you do with the why after you went through that interview process before bringing people in? If you would identify certain things about their sort of upbringing or about their motivations or just their mindset, how would you as business leaders use that to sort of extract the best performance of those individuals?
Yeah, we would have to literally help them visualize the goal, right?
Yeah.
Where do you want to get to, and we're going to help you get there.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of, in recruitment as well, I think we were very good at just showing compassion as well, and a bit of empathy and understanding.
Which is very lacking in our industry.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, again, that came from our lack of experience, right? I personally only had 15 months recruitment experience in one place, a very small shop, and that's kind of the only thing I knew. So for me, it was just like, I want to build something that just feels right to me. And if it's a people business, I think now it's become more, there's been more and more studies that like employee engagement is so critical to the success of any business, and having a team that want to win as a collective allows you to turbocharge your growth and turbocharge what you want to do 10x, right, compared to your competitors.
Do you think you guys could have achieved what you did if you say went down the path that I did, which is, sort of 17, 18 years of working with or alongside other people before starting up your agency and extracting all that knowledge and then doing something? Maybe not 17, 18 years, but do you think you would have been able to accomplish more or less if you had worked somewhere for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, extracted more, understood more about the industry, understood more about leadership and management in that industry? Or do you think it was perfect as it was because we were raw and we were growing into our roles together?
Yeah, I think both ways can work. I think if tomorrow I want to set up another recruitment agency, I think we could do it very quickly and it could be successful. And I think there's some experience there, but the market is different as well. But everything happens for a reason. I think timing is very important. We were in the right place at the right time with the right attitude, and with a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work, we're able to build something. And I think if I take away all of that now I'm in a different situation, I have different costs, whereas when I was younger, I was able to take that risk as well. Yeah. So I think it depends on everyone. There's the pros and cons. So I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah, of course.
And I think The only thing I wish we knew about, like funding, and I think those first 2 years that we were still learning, I would have definitely did that.
Yeah.
I wish we had someone had told us to latch on to advisors earlier and mentors. I think we could have done with some really, really strong mentorship in the very, very formative days. I think that could have helped save us a lot of time as well. We did do that, I would say, after about 3.5 years. We got introduced to a networking, and we were able to onboard a very experienced non-exec director and a CFO. And they composed of a board. And that helped us, like, that was the game changer for us. I think if we hadn't have onboarded those advisors, if we hadn't have got that experience, we would probably still have Digital Gurus now, and we wouldn't have done what we did.
You mentioned the market's different now. What's the biggest change from all those years ago when you guys started DG to now, and looking at the landscape of the recruitment industry with all the players that are there right now, here and abroad? What are you seeing as the biggest differences or like challenges that are being faced right now?
There's a lot of challenges. I think recruitment has never...
Are they the same challenges?
Potentially. So there's some are very similar. So I think recruitment has always been a very easy market to get into.
Yeah.
So the barriers to entry are the lowest of almost any other industry. As long as you have a phone and you know someone and a laptop, you can literally start a recruitment business tomorrow. But what that does is create an enormous amount of competition.
Yeah.
I think London had 20,000 recruitment agencies when we started, right? We were one of 20,000 in digital. We were one of the first. 3 years later, there were 20 digital recruitment agencies that had cropped up after seeing what we were doing. So the landscape can change very quickly. What I would say now, though, is the tools that people have, the knowledge that companies now have from having lots of recruiters who've now changed and gone internal, has allowed a lot of businesses to mature their own internal processes, which I think is a must. I think every big firm has to own their own brand and has to do their own recruitment internally. They have to build something there. Whether they need to supplement it with external resources, I'm a big believer of that as well. But I think that's something that's changed massively, right? So like that internal TA that has come up in the last 10 years, I would say. So whereas it always used to just be recruitment agencies doing everything externally, now you have to compete. Well, there's a competition.
Sounding like someone who's held a chief people officer position for a fast-growing tech startup, right?
Yeah. I mean, that I guess is what makes my experience really unique.
Definitely does.
Is the fact that I've been able to be on both sides. So after finishing up at Digital Guru, so after we sold the business to the Rethink Group, that was in 2016, I decided to move to Dubai with my family. To look after the Dubai office here. At the time when I joined, the business wasn't really growing. There was a bit of a presence here, but the staff weren't that happy, and it was the first time we'd ever had an office that wasn't running like back home.
Because you guys weren't here, right? At that time. So.
Yeah. And I think when we were part of the Rethink Group, we were like, okay, cool. Either we need to shut this down, or we really need to get a founder out there. So I put my hand up. And I thought, look, I'm 31 now. It's time to, like, if I don't leave or test myself somewhere else, I never will.
Yeah.
And the UAE and Dubai is a place that I've always loved. I used to come here on holidays regularly. The culture, just the place, the vibe is amazing. Like, I've been here now for nearly 8 years, and I don't think I would ever leave. And coming from London, which is one of the most cosmopolitan cities, exactly. Like it's so hustle and bustle, right? What they've been able to create out here in the region is phenomenal. I think when I first moved, they just won Expo. There was a lot of growth there. There was the idea to turn Dubai and the UAE into a digital first city. We have 100% penetration of users with mobile phones, so everyone is very tech savvy. It's a very young population as well, like between sort of 20 to 50. So everyone's up for the newest trend or whatever's happening. So it was the perfect time, I think, for me to come to the region and to be out here with Digital Gurus. Those early formative years when I first started, I was working with the Kareems, and before Noon even started, they were in stealth mode, and they didn't even have a name, and we were recruiting and scaling up for those guys, and that really gave me a great idea of like, look, there's a real market here, but culture and talent is something that this region is still really lacking. It's come a long way in the last couple of years, but there's still a huge gap to what I was able to experience recruiting for your Amazons and Facebooks and Googles back in London, right? And I think the aim for the GCC is to be here, and I think we're getting there, but we just need more experience and more forward-thinking leaders to be out here to really understand what's so important about people and culture.
Do you find that in your role now with Eyewa, working with arguably some of the most reputable founders in the region, sitting into that role as a chief people officer and whatever that overall encompassing role is with people, talent acquisition, the whole sort of structure around that with the HR framework? Did you find that the founders had that sort of vision or passion to actually get this right, or was it more like, we are struggling with this, they know you're an early stage investor, let's see whether or not we can sort of utilize your expertise to try to help us with something that led to something bigger without them even knowing this?
Yeah. I think so the guys really care about the people side of things. I think they really understood early on the importance of building a great culture, and I think even from the first days they'd put down some values and the mission, and they were very strong at doing that. And if you meet them and you see the values, you can see that they align in them, right? And I think that's very important. And I think all of the team, when I joined, it was a team of incredibly nice people, like just decent human beings. And I was like, you know what, that's real great sort of starting block or place to grow from. I think they realized that there was definitely a need, and it was something that was outside of their comfort zone. They were very busy on the strategic side, trying to scale. They wanted to focus on fundraising and higher level global sort of regional expansion, right? And I think when I joined, we were an online e-commerce player and had just opened our very first store in Saudi, in Khobar. We were about 100 people, and most of that was for e-com and online stuff. The guys did an absolutely incredible pivot into retail to create this omni-channel journey, which is online to offline. And within the last 2.5 years, we've gone from the 100 people when I joined to 850.
It's insane.
By the end of this year, Iowa will have opened their 100th store, and we should be close to 1,000 employees. When I first met the guys and we sat down, we mapped out a 4-year plan. And at that 4-year plan, I'd put down when we hit 500 staff. We were able to do double that in half the time. So it just shows how quickly things even changed within that first year of me joining. And I think definitely something which initially might have been outside of my comfort zone, but what I realized is that as a CPO, it's always people-led. It's very strategic, and it's about getting the big ideas right. And also, I think what was really important was the fact that these days you're seeing more and more companies, especially large groups where the CHRO or the CPO, they're people who are actually in line for the CEO role, because businesses, especially in the West, are starting to value that people side more and more, and they see the impact of that. So yeah, it's been really good.
The scale is remote. The scale is hybrid. It's Iowa hasn't just fixated on just one thing, right? So holding a chief people officer position in this part of the world now for the last 2.5 years, what are your views on this sort of debatable sort of decision on whether or not everyone should be in-house, everyone should, or you should have that flexibility, you should have outsource all your sort of tech or whatever it may be to other parts of the world. What's your opinion?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think, so it's funny. So we
because when we started working with Eyewa, we were working on all remote roles. There was like 15, 16 tech roles, and they were all remote. As long as they were within a sort of 2 hour sort of time frame, we were looking for anyone who lived 2 hours away from the UAE.
Yeah. Okay,
which was super exciting, right? And you guys were one of the first that gave us that sort of assignment. Okay, is that the model that you think is not only for Eyewa but for many tech companies now that should be following?
I think so. I think if for tech in particular, I think the world has changed so much that if you don't have a remote policy for your tech talent, you just will never be able to attract the best people.
Yeah.
It's the biggest, it's the one biggest fundamental issue that all companies are facing, that if they're not agile enough. I think we've seen COVID has turbocharged that.
Mm-hmm.
It benefits companies from a cost perspective, but the biggest downside is the impact it has on culture. Mm-hmm. It's a huge negative to be working with someone that you've never ever met in person. Yeah. Coming from a little bit more of a traditional environment where recruiters and we want everyone to be with us, I think you always miss something or things that can be done in the office together, etc. Those little 2-minute meetings in a corridor, or you can just go over to someone's desk to get something done rather than waiting a period of time to book it into their calendar, invaluable. Yeah. I know there's tools now, you have Slack, you can just get on a huddle, and you can have a quick, but it's not the same, right? Mm-hmm. And you could literally work with someone for 2 years and never have met them face to face. So we had a remote culture for our tech and product team. As you mentioned, there were anywhere within sort of a 2 to 3 hour time zone. We had people in South Africa, in Eastern Europe, in India, in Jordan, in Morocco, and we had this collective of people. We also had a huge presence in Saudi. Mm-hmm. We had more than 500, 550 Saudi staff, of which 89% were local Saudis. Wow. And that was across East, West and Central, so we had our office in Riyadh, in Jeddah and in Khobar. So we had to deal with scaling in a new territory, in an area where talent is really lacking and is coming through the grassroots only now. Yep. We also were expanding across the GCC, so we had an office in Bahrain, one in Kuwait, one in Oman, and obviously the headquarters was in the UAE. So that, and then on top of that, I guess we have 2 different types of employees. We have our HQ staff, who are your marketing and your tech and your product, etc. Yep. And then we had our retail staff as well, who are there working 6 days a week. And they have having to think of 3 to 4 different types of people, type of work groups, was always something which was a huge challenge to us as well. So whenever we were scaling, any policy we created, we had to make sure it fit for 4 different groups. So that was something which was really interesting and something really unique.
I'm privileged to have access to a lot of similar people to yourself who are chief people officers or VPs of HRs or chief HR officers. And whenever I sit with them socially and we speak about obviously their jobs or their careers and so forth, the one constant that I hear is, especially in this region, the HR role, the HR department doesn't get enough, isn't empowered enough, doesn't get enough respect in this part of the world, right? So, which would cause so many different challenges, right? Because you know what you're trying to achieve, and yet the business as a whole is saying just stay in your lane because we're doing so many other things, and HR being the least sexy of them, when it comes to the external viewpoint. We just do some payroll and some comp and bends or whatever it may be, sort of thing, right? So how do you, or what are your views on coming into a business and still maintaining a sort of presence, a voice for the direction of the company, because the culture that you've built in Eyewa, I mean, I use Eyewa as an example when I ran a workshop in Hub 71 recently about how to build a sustainable culture, right? And talking about retention and things like that, right? And one of the guests in the workshop asked me, can you give us an example? I said, Eyewa, because of what you've told me about what of the workings on in that business, right? So how do you do that when there are so many other things happening? Is that like a huge challenge to be able to sort of implement things that you know are important, but they're probably taking a back seat to so many other things that are happening in the business?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think like HR is still, I would say, in the majority of businesses in the region, it is seen as a secondary or third sort of priority. I think it's a department that is always asking for more money to spend on our staff, to give them things, etc. And in a market where everyone is looking for a path to profitability, there's always that clash. I think also it's always been seen as an admin function.
Yeah.
It's a blocker.
Mm-hmm.
It's corporate. It's slow. And I think one of the first things I did when I joined Eyewa, it was still called the HR team. And I wanted to change that, and I called it the people team.
Yeah.
And I think even that small shift internally had a really big impact, because like when HR, you just think of it as filing and grievances and stuff like that, and that is probably one of the smallest parts that should just be automatically run. It's set, it's built, and it's just there. The real value to people is the more engaged your team are, the better your business will perform, which will directly lead to better revenue, better profit margins, and more success. Ultimately, very, very fundamental. And the idea is that you want to create that engaged workforce, and everything you do needs to fall into that. I had a very simple sort of way of how I looked at everything, and this is like, what's our why? Why are we doing this? Why do we have a people team, etc.? And there was two things. It was attract the very best people and retain our best people.
Yeah.
And I think if every strategy that comes out of the people team falls into those two buckets, then you're always adding value.
Mm-hmm.
So an example of attracting the best talent. So we want to make sure that we have the best brand out there. We want people to know that what Eyewa are doing, how we treat our staff, how successful we are. We want to hear from our current employees. We want to have to see great testimonials, so that anyone who goes onto our LinkedIn page, onto our website page, they have a click. Instantly, they can get a vibe of what we are.
A human vibe.
A human vibe.
Yeah.
Like, what is our culture? What is our character? What are our values? What is our mission? I think it's very clear to have that, and it needs to be out there. The way you communicate things is everything, right? And then there's two-way communication. However you talk externally to future potential candidates, there's also a different tone of how you speak to our own people.
Oh, absolutely.
So we call them I-ones, our I-ones, and we would have a way that we would speak to them and present to them, and all information was shared, and we were quite transparent in the way we operated. So I think that's super important for talent attraction. For retention, okay, like how do you keep your best people? We ran multiple surveys. We use various tools and technology to really get into.
What are the good ones? The tools.
The ones I've used, I think Culture Amp has done very well over the last couple of years. I think the insights that they give, you can break down like lots of things from that. What was really, really interesting though was when we looked at all the data, and you're scored like out of 100, and you have like greens and reds, and there's a nice colourful visual. We could see that when people join us in their first 6 months, it's very, very high, like engagement. People are very happy. That first year is great. But what we found was there was a huge dip when people were there after 1 to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And like, why is that? And when you dig in deep, it's just like, okay, cool, we've brought these people on, we've told them we're going to do something, or we've promised them this, or this career growth, or this opportunity, or whatever. And maybe we're not delivering on this, or maybe they're feeling a little bit disillusioned, or they haven't had the right onboarding, or the right guidance, or the right manager. So what we realized, like within sort of all of our strategies, okay, we need to make sure that what we're doing in that first year, we're setting ourselves up to have people who are going to continue to stay for 2, 3, 4. And what we found was people that worked for us for more than 2 years, but it started to go green again because they've been through that and the uncertainty. And actually, we came good on the things that we said, and they were still there. So that's where data becomes really, really important.
Yeah.
And that's where measuring engagement levels, where you do regular interview sessions with your people, get direct feedback, like what is it that you don't like, or that you think we could improve, or where is there an opportunity that we're missing. And every quarter we would do a survey, we would have the results, we would speak to the whole team, and we would be like, okay, these are the actions that we're going to do to improve things in a quarter, and then we'd report back next quarter on what we'd done, what we'd achieved, and did that. So I think that building trust with the team is very important. I think they need to see that things are being done. The business needs to be in a position to be able to also deliver on that, right? There's lots of startups. I think we were very lucky that we were a successful startup, right? That allows you to do more things than, say, a startup that is struggling or they're sort of plateauing, right? So we had a great opportunity where we went from Series A, Series B, Series C, and have scaled and now the business is at a profitable level. I think it's been a great story, and what we've been able to do is make sure that the people there that have been on the journey, we've looked after them. Our retention rates are exceptional. I think in terms of during the period that I was there, like we'd identified our key performers and we didn't lose a single one.
Amazing.
Which was really, really strong, and it's testament to the guys, to the management team, for being open enough to listen, to want to do that. I think that's really important because there's so many founders that would be like, nah, I don't agree with that, or I don't believe in that. And I think my experience helped them to understand. I think my experience of being a business owner also helped them to understand because I could put on 2 different hats. I could be like, okay, cool, this is business F. We need to look after the bottom line. So any policy that we come with, we need to look at that in the right frame of mind. Also, if the guys came back with valid like data points or valid opinions, and we could have that conversation and come to an agreement. And there will be times where there'll be small things that I would win and small things that they would win. One of the big ones that we often debated in the management team was the back to work element. I think over the last couple of years, like many businesses have had the same sort of struggle. I think there was a 50-50 sort of split of people wanting everyone back in the office versus having that flexibility.
How do you manage that scenario where you know you're probably going to disappoint some, if not half, of the people, okay, by making a business decision that what you and the other business leaders believe is the right thing for the business, knowing that it's going to ruffle some feathers?
Yeah.
You know, how do you get to that point as business leaders and be comfortable with, we're doing this, knowing that 30% of them are going to throw their toys out of the pram?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? It's very, very difficult. I think with anything, right? I think in the people team in general, every communication we used to send out, you would have to double, triple, quadruple check.
I was going to say it'd be more like sort of prevalent for you guys in the people team, right? Because unlike other departments, your mandate is how is this going to affect the people? The staff, the employees.
And for me personally, anything that I felt was going to be detrimental to our employee engagement was a no for me. Like I was just like, why would we shoot ourselves in the foot to do something anti, right? And I was like, okay, fine. If you guys can show me the business is going down, or we're not hitting the right sort of KPIs or whatever it is. I think ultimately it comes down to trust. And I think you have to have trust in the team, but also you have to have trust in your managers to be able to vet the people who...
Which one is more? Because I've had this debate so many times. Is it the lack of trust in people who are working either from home or working remote? Or is it the lack of leadership from middle to senior management in that business who can't actually instill that sort of control and that guidance to be able to get the people to perform? Where do you see the bigger gap?
It's a tough one. I think, look, if I put my business head on, I would always, and I go back to my recruitment days, I would always think that if you let people work from home, they're probably not going to work at
They're going to take
full
the piss.
capacity.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think that is a sentiment that everyone in that sort of vein is, if I can't see you, I don't know what's happening and stuff. But there's so many studies now, there's so much data out there which shows that people working from home actually do more hours, right?
They do.
They work longer hours, they're more committed, and it's
it's ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Like you're taking that call at 9 p.m, you're taking that call at 7:30 a.m. because you're home all the time, right? Yeah. It's probably not healthy. I mean, I don't believe it's healthy because that mindset. I mean, I did it for a few months at the start of this year as I was transitioning and from offices, and although I found it quite productive to work in patches, say 2-3 hours, where I was just constantly just doing things, I also found myself wasting a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I found myself not feeling like I was achieving anything just by the fact that I didn't have enough motivation to get dressed properly. And now, granted, this is probably how I dress to go to work anyway, right? But like, still, like you don't, you're happy to sit in your home clothes, you know, and do your work, because as long as the top half is showing on your video call, you're sweet, right?
Can't see the shorts.
Can't see the amazing legs that you've been working on for a couple of years. But you know, so I can see that. But it has that sort of that huge challenge.
Yeah, and it's as a founder, do you go on anecdotal one-off stories or inclinations that you have of like there's the odd person that isn't working, versus some data which is out there?
It has to be data, right?
You would think so, right? But it's very easy to like fall into like, well, this is what
being
I
impulsive
see.
and being reactive and just saying we're not doing this anymore because he or she stuffed it up for everybody else.
And we had remote engineers who we realised were working 2 jobs in different time zones, and then all of a sudden you're just thinking everyone's doing that, right? And it's just like, that's not a nice feeling to have, because we're a high growth startup, we're looking for everyone to put in 110%. Was
their work suffering? Because that's another debate, that if they can handle it, why not allow them if they are like that, right?
There's definitely if things aren't broken or they're not breaking and we're hitting all of our milestones, I would say that is fine. I think in tech in particular though, it's very difficult to measure it, especially if you're a non-techie, how successful things are being implemented in a 3-month period and a 6-month period. Before you know it, 9 months has happened and you realise that you're nowhere near where you needed to be. And I think that is the problem with when you're working with people and you don't understand the output. I think so it's risky. I think tech is something that is probably the most challenging. I've met so many businesses, so many founders, so many companies who've wasted so much money on their tech teams because they followed one person's, which you would do, right? And they've gone down that, and they've used a technology, there isn't enough resources, or it's too expensive, or it's too complicated, or it's a fad of the moment, rather than having, like, it just needs to do the job. And I think the more seasoned you get, you realize it's about just getting things out of the door. It's about executing, speed of execution. And I think when I look back at what we did at Digital Gurus and what we've done at Eyewa, it's been very much execution led. So you build a team of highly driven, highly engaged people with a very high sense of ownership. If you have that, and obviously the art in that is the interviewing and the identifying of that talent, which is a skill in itself. If you do that, and when you have ideas, you go ahead and you just push through and get it done, that is a huge secret to success. And I think, and to just proof of concept, right? That something's going to work, and then you double down, you triple down, you quadruple down, you've got it, and then everyone's buying into it. I think that is where it's really important. I think we were one of the first to branch out into, when we had Digital Gurus, into cyber security before it was coming out, or big data and stuff. And we just take a risk. We're like, okay, cool. We found this guy, looks good. Let's go for it. I think that's what you need to do. But it comes from, like, again, it just needs founders or management team to really buy into the importance of the people. If you have low engagement, you have higher staff turnover, the amount of time it takes to fill a role or a replacement could be 6 months, right? 6 months of lost IP, intelligence, what you have, plus getting that person up to speed, and then hoping they're as good as that person. So many startups as well, they start off paying their guys on the low end, and if they're not aware of like market rates and what is going on in the industry, before they know, all of a sudden some of their key people are just getting picked off. I think it's very important to make sure, especially in the early stages, if you're a startup, to keep reviewing salaries, keep doing benchmarking exercises, keep seeing where is the market heading, because if you lose that person and you weren't expecting it, or you have to come back in with a counter offer, I think you've already lost them.
You must have seen my post last week about counter offers, but
we had to.
It's refreshing to hear you say that. Like to hear someone from now the client side think about or see the value of those, not necessarily the performance reviews, but the salary reviews. Because where we are sitting today in this studio is one of my clients, and I talk to him about obviously this thing on a regular basis, that we are looking at everyone's salaries, how they're structured compared to market rates, compared to what value they're actually adding into the actual organisation as well. So there's so many things that we need to sort of assess, which is why, from an external point of view, I look at people and culture roles. I won't say HR anymore. I mean, I don't like the term HR. I think HR is very old school, corporate sort of terminology. The people and culture division of a business, that facet is so crucial to everything. It connects everything. Why? Because it's the human side of the business, and everything that impacts the human. So no matter how great the concept is for a tech business, if they don't have the right people in there, they will not go far. All right. If you don't treat those people well, they will not stay with you. If you don't create a great culture like you did in Digital Gurus, in a competitive landscape where everyone leaves for so many different reasons, and most of them stupid reasons, they don't stay with you, and then you don't become successful and exit a business. Everything falls down to the people and culture side of a business. Right? Which makes your role and every other person's role who holds that title so crucial. And the more clients see that now and see it quickly and put value to that, the better off they'll be. Correct?
100%.
Yeah.
I think, and in my days at Digital Gurus, I was very lucky that I got to see inside so many companies in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, in Saudi. I'd meet founders, I'd meet management teams. I would hear from my team, right? They would be speaking to candidates wanting out of certain companies or wanting to leave, and they would tell me one thing, and then all of a sudden we've got 5 of their employee looking for a new job, right? So like something's not adding up. We used to move a heck of a lot of people over from the UK and the US and all over the world to Dubai, and we'd be putting them into these roles, and within 2 months they're like, we want out, we want to get out. And as a recruiter, as someone who's moved someone's family over, that's a horrible feeling. And sometimes, like I've seen, you can see like people still place someone in a role, and they're like, I think this founder is a bit dodgy, or the culture's a bit dodgy, and it's horrible to see. And there's a lot of growing up that the region needs to do. There's a lot of focus that founders need, and educating on the importance of people. I think it's very important that companies are able to strike a balance between spending money on salaries and paying peanuts as well. You need to get the balance, and also the power of ESOP. I think in the last crash, like I'm getting old now, but I think I've been very lucky to see a couple of crashes in the market, right? There was 2008, and we had 2015 out here, and then with COVID, and now we're going through like a bit of a mini one again. And I think we're due another crash, and I think or some sort of market correction, a downturn. I think we're seeing it in the US, like the recruitment businesses I know in the US and in the UK. People are struggling, TAs are out of work, people are like, what's going on? And it's stark contrast to the bounce after COVID in 2021, and everyone was spending money. So I think ESOP has lost a lot of its value. Like, people are realizing that it's here and now. They're thinking more here and now, right? So it's like, okay, great, ESOP's great, but am I going to see that anytime soon? Because I've just seen thousands of companies who've had all of their ESOP wiped out, and it means nothing.
Do you want to name them? Let's name and shame.
Maybe for another day. And and I think that you have to create better packages, right? It's not all about money. People don't care about money. Like, if you go down in people's like hierarchy of what their needs are out here in the region, money isn't number one.
It's so fascinating to hear, especially in this part of the world, right?
And I would actually say the Middle East is one of those ones where money is way higher than other countries, right? We have this stereotype that, it's paved with gold, and I'm going to get housing paid for, and I'm going to live on the palm, and schoolings, everything's done. That time is gone. Like, that does not exist. Like,
so gone.
It's finished. And Dubai has turned into a very successful digital economy. It's turned into one of the best places in the world to live. And if you want to work here, you take that and you just move. You're not here for that upside and that money now. So the mindset is shifted. So what do people look for? They want to work in a great culture. That's the first thing that they look for. They want to work with exceptional people. So you have to hire great people. You need to attract great people. And they want to have a good work-life balance. Whether you're a startup or a founder, or you want to hear that, there is that. COVID has shifted it. People have understood that you don't have to kill yourself for it. There'll definitely be areas where you'll need to do that, and people will be expected to do it, but you don't have to do that forever, right? There's burnout and everything. So I think mental wellness, mental health is becoming more and more predominant. Is something that is being spoken about. It's starting to be more recognized here in the region. I think it's something at Eyewa that we were active to continue to push. Literally, like a couple of days ago, the guys in the team had a sound healing session in the office. People remotely tuned in as well, and a couple of the girls ran the session after work at 6 p.m. Right? You're
semi-smirking when you're saying this. I'm trying to not smile over that terminology, but
so there's things, I think businesses, and there's a demand, right? We had so many people turned up for it. We would get people to talk about like how to sit at work and your posture, and how to do stretches to make it, especially if you're working remotely, right? Things like that can add a real value. Investing in a good health insurance for your people so they have that peace of mind. I think those sorts of things people are asking for. Health and wellness, if you've got access to a gym, or if you can provide that, or some healthy food in the office, those sorts of things. Again, small things, but I think it works. I think longer gone are the days of, you need a PlayStation in the office or a ping pong table. They're nice, but
they're so surface level and shallow right now, right?
It's very, very shallow. So I think
the whole announcement of, look at my new desk, my new laptop, my new pen, my mouse pad, and so forth, and this is where I'm working. Typically, you see those people leaving those jobs after 3-6 months because there's nothing else beyond that first day when they get the toys. Right?
And we also realized that, like, you have to build a great onboarding journey, right? You need to have people, and it doesn't last for a day or a week. Not. It's a full year sort of cycle, right? As I mentioned before, like that drop off at year 1 to 2, like you have to be consistent for that first year. let people understand what they're getting into and how they're going to get support and train, because it takes so long to get up to speed. And in a startup, I think the speed at what we were doing things, so many people just wouldn't be able to cope. Right? I think that's the biggest difference between working for a Series B, Series C scale up versus working for a corporate business. It's the idea that you can have an idea today and it could be rolled out tomorrow. It's just so agile. You can pivot from one thing to another, and I think that's what's really exciting. I think that's something that has always resonated with me.
I'm conscious of time, but I do want to touch on something, because I know that moving forward for you is, or what's on the horizon is a sort of advisory capacity for you, and considering now that you've explained very well, obviously, what you've been doing with Eyewa, and obviously what you've done with DGs throughout, beyond a decade and so forth, right? So the advisory space for me is, I've got a genuine passion for it, because I launched my own advisory business, and and I see a huge gap in helping business leaders, not only founders from early stage startups, but even leaders in multinationals as well, who still need that sort of guidance, right? You're going down this path, I believe, eventually, and it might be in your traditional sort of method of rapid, because everything you do is rapid. Everything you do is like DGs going in and building a business that is just in an amazing fashion, and going into Eyewa and scaling that business just astronomically, right? So I see this next phase for you being a very exciting one. Can you tell me a little bit about what you think the gaps are, and where you think you can sort of, plug in to be able to provide that sort of added value to those organizations?
Yeah, definitely. I think.
So, I know it's on the spot sort of question, because I don't think I prepped you for this one, right?
That's all right. We prepped?
Kind of.
I think so my angle, and I've touched on it already, I think it's about raising the awareness of the importance of culture in the Middle East. And I think it's about getting out there and educating senior level management, senior founders, startups on what they should be doing and at what stage, to make sure that they're putting their best foot forward to be able to attract and retain the best talent in which is going to become one of the most competitive industries and spaces and regions here, if it's not already, right? I've been speaking to VCs and heads of sort of DIFC, etc., and the amount of business that they want to bring to this region externally out here. They're not only looking for startups homegrown now, it's about, okay, cool, how can we bring some of that IP externally and really push it and grow it? And I think if those businesses come to this region and they see the state of how cultures are built right now, they won't last for long. So I think there's a huge gap, and I think there's a huge demand, even if people don't realize that there is. I think when they realize what they're missing, it's super, super important and powerful. The amount of founders I've met, or businesses even recently, and they don't even have company values, or they don't have a very clear mission, or the employees within the team, they don't have clearly defined goals, right, or career paths. Even from building out a really comprehensive performance management where the goals cascade down throughout the team, so every single person within that organization knows what we're standing for, what we're striving for, how we behave, but then what my role is to help us get to where we need to. I think that's what's really important, that building that end to end, and just making sure that companies are doing that to the best of their ability. Also, like, just training up people within the team, right? So whether it's coaching senior level management on like how they should run their teams, or how they should do their one-to-ones, and how they should be with people, I think that's really important for businesses to do. And then obviously just making sure that the current people team in that business know what they're doing and how they're working.
Amazing. And for someone who just got put on the spot, that's actually a Brilliant answer. You've been rehearsing this behind the scenes or something. And look, like I've enjoyed this conversation, and I would love to sort of bring you back in sort of 12 months' time, and to see how big this advisory thing is for you, because there are gaps everywhere from where we see, and like I mentioned earlier, we are privileged to have that access. To speak to so many business leaders where others just see them from afar, and we get to know what their pain points are, and some of them leave us scratching our heads thinking, how do you even have this problem, when you're just such a good brand and such a good business, but they do have these problems. Because whether it's naivety, whether it's neglect or anything in between, they just don't resolve these problems because they don't have someone like yourself coming in to actually either advise from an external point of view, to actually tell them what needs to be done, the steps that need to be followed, or actually bringing you in like a CPO to come in and actually say, okay, I'm going to embed myself, I'm going to build a team around, and the whole emphasis around this business and success is going to be people. The human side of this business.
And I think, don't get me wrong, we're doing well, right? Every single year, the region is coming on leaps and bounds. But there's definitely opportunities to turbocharge that. And I think in Saudi in particular, from my experience of scaling and growing in the region there, and the demand that's going to be there for talent, just the awareness, the training of the youth, and all of that upskilling, I think there's a huge market and gap there.
Agreed. Mate, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great chat, and I'm sure the audience will absolutely love it. I thought we'll get 10,000, 20,000 likes on this in LinkedIn, probably 100,000 views on YouTube. You've just absolutely smashed it, mate.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel privileged that you even asked me.
And I appreciate you wearing a shirt as well. I know that you don't normally wear a shirt, mate. So
I tried.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you.